Top of the morning to you, ladies and gents. Welcome back to Silverstones. My name is Joran Headley. I'll be your host for today's show, where we're doing our weekly news show. The show is about Bitcoin, silver, cryptocurrency, the financial markets, and everything in between. So what's going on with Bitcoin this week? It's actually been a rather uneventful week, especially compared to the last month or so with all the FTX stuff going on. It's kind of quieted down, which is nice. However, Dave Portnoy did a really good rant on Twitter last night. He was talking about SBF, or scam bankrupt fraud. I think that's what they're calling them now. It's almost like that whole thing is just like scripted or something. It's weird. But anyways, he did a big rant on SBF. I didn't used to like Dave Portnoy. I'm going to be honest. I thought he was kind of a dick when he first kind of started coming out on the scene. But through the years, especially the last year or two, with the amount of support that he's given out to small businesses and other charities, I think that I misjudged him. So anyways, I think Portnoy will be fine either way, but make sure to check out that rant on Twitter. It's pretty good stuff. But the price of Bitcoin today, so we got 17,000 bucks approximately. It shot up a couple hours ago. And of course, whenever that happens, it immediately gets slammed and suppressed back down. So we're kind of hovering around 17,000 US dollars today. And it's kind of been this way for the last couple weeks to a month, I guess, ever since the FTX and BlockFi stuff. It's kind of been hovering around 16 or 17,000 bucks, which is okay. I honestly thought that Bitcoin would drop a lot more, especially with all the bad press that it's been getting lately, which is completely unwarranted, of course, which I'm going to get into a little bit later here. I'll be sharing the screen in just a second. But even with the FTX thing, I still think that the most important thing, because there is such a negative connotation and perception still from the general public, from the media, and from the government who's trying to regulate Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, that if you had any of your Bitcoin, if you held Bitcoin in your own private wallet with your own private keys, then you are unaffected by this whole FTX thing. Other than the price dropping down a little bit, you are unaffected. And so to say that FTX and Bitcoin are the same when it's really couldn't be further from the truth is hard. And it's something that I'm trying my best to describe, I guess, and explain using YouTube and Twitter and whatever else. And I honestly think that people are starting to understand the difference there between Bitcoin and crypto, which is great. So let's get into it here. Let's get on with the show. It's actually December the 8th today. I'll probably won't be releasing this video today, but it's my birthday. So I got the lovely day for a Guinness. I'll be having a few Guinnesses tonight if I can figure out how to share the screen. We'll get there in 1 second. Here we go. Okay, so I like starting these kind of with a different meme. I think that memes are actually important. If you're trying to share a message of any sort, I think that memes are extremely underrated in the sense that how they communicate a message to somebody. So I'll kind of go through this a little bit here, but it says, "You should buy Bitcoin," which was me last Christmas. Basically exactly what happened. The family says, "You said that last Christmas and it's down 70%. And then I say, "Buy more then." And then you can see the family shocked, and then me with a Santa hat on and laser eyes. That was an alarm. That was your daily reminder to shake. If you're a ShakePay user, pull out your phone and shake for some Satoshis. I was thinking about ShakePay the other day too. And it'll be interesting to see. I think that in 10 years down the road, when we're looking back at 2022, and we're going to be telling our kids, our whatever grandkids, whatever it may be, we were shaking our phone back in 2022 and we were earning 700 Satoshis per day just for shaking our phone. And it'll also be interesting to see what happens with ShakePay and how much their user agreement and their payouts change as the Bitcoin price increases over time. If it happens, I shouldn't say when it happens, but if it happens, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. So wanted to share that meme to start off on a lighter note here. I want to talk about El Salvador too. I mentioned this last week on the news show of 21 Milli, talking about El Salvador, how they were issuing Bitcoin bonds. So the news has been talking about how El Salvador has been issuing these Bitcoin bonds where the bonds are actually secured by Bitcoin. Instead of being secured by the government of El Salvador, they're secured by Bitcoin. This article here is talking about how El Salvador is using volcanic energy to mine Bitcoin. So we got the Bitcoin bonds. We have the Bitcoin mining using volcanoes. El Salvador has also been in the news lately because they've been, one of their top priorities there is taking out the MS-13 gang members. Back in 2020, geez, I can't even speak. 2012. So used to saying 2020. Back in 2012, El Salvador actually was the highest murder rate per capita in the world. And so the new president there, he's taken the initiative of trying to get rid of this MS-13 gang members and the violence in their country. And so they've actually arrested 56,000 MS-13 gang members over the last couple of years. And even last month, they actually had these inmates who have been arrested for the gangs. The president had these inmates go down to the tombstones of these MS-13 gang members and destroy the tombs of these dead now MS-13 gang members. And he said basically that we should not be recognizing terrorists or gang members. So pretty wild stuff happening in El Salvador right now. I think that is very underappreciated in the world and definitely not talked about enough outside of the Bitcoin community, just what kind of positive impact the president here of El Salvador is having on their country. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens in El Salvador over the next, a couple of years or a decade, and what kind of impact the making Bitcoin a legal tender there last year, what kind of impact all this will have into the future. And another country I'm going to be talking about here, this is on Bloomberg. So they tried making me pay for this article. I'm not going to do that. So we can only see the headline here, but it's scary. And it says Nigeria caps their ATM cash withdrawals at $45 daily in an attempt to push digital payments. So Nigeria is trying to issue a central bank digital currency there, an naira, it looks like. And so they've limited their citizens to $45 per day in ATM withdrawals, trying to not encourage them, but force them to adopt this central bank digital currency. And if you're new to this channel, I've talked about this before, the difference between a Bitcoin standard and the central bank digital currency. Bitcoin is very decentralized. It has a fixed supply. There's no CEO. There's no Bitcoin headquarters, no government involvement there. Central bank digital currency basically flip Bitcoin on its head. You have fully centralized, fully controlled. Anytime they want to shut you off, they'll have the ability to do that. So I really want to, over the next year, and kind of one of my main missions here is actually explaining the difference between Bitcoin and central bank digital currencies and how scary central bank digital currencies are for the future. So when they try to implement them in Canada, hopefully some people, whoever's watching the show and people who are kind of in this community, they realize how bad central bank currencies are. So this is just another example that Nigeria is trying to force it on their citizens. So we'll see what happens with that. Also in Africa, though, we have Jack Dorsey. Jack, at Jack from Twitter. You remember him. So he's investing. I think he's living in Africa right now. I'm not sure. Fact check me there if you want to. But he's in Africa. It says back in Africa, but I'm pretty sure he lives there. And so he's talking about cryptocurrency. He's investing $2 million in building infrastructure for Bitcoin mining in Africa. And so I wanted to scroll down here a little bit and show a quote here. I think this is important because obviously we're in Canada, we're in North America. We don't really see the true value of Bitcoin yet. And so this quote from Jack says, in Europe and in the USA, Bitcoin is more of a desire. In Africa and some other less developed countries, Bitcoin is a necessity. So we just seen Nigeria there. They're trying to force their citizens to go into the central bank digital currency. And we've seen how much inflation these countries have experienced over the last couple of years and decades. And so in Canada, in US and Europe, Bitcoin is a desire right now. We still have a fully functioning banking system. Even though inflation's at about 10% right now, we're still not at a scary enough point to force people to realize the full potential of Bitcoin yet. Where in these less developed countries like Africa, like El Salvador, they know the importance of sound money because they haven't had that in their life. And they've lived with tyrannical governments who have inflated their currencies at their own benefit. So it's really cool to see Jack in Africa and what he's doing in Africa. He's been a big advocate of Bitcoin, and it's actually recently learned a different twist. I thought that Jack was actually a POS in the last couple of years, but more recently I've come to see that he's a huge supporter of Bitcoin. He was one of the original guys talking about Bitcoin in the early days, and so I've changed my opinion on Dave Portnoy and on Jack due to recent events and recent information that's come my way. So it's good to see. I'm a fan of Jack, you could say. And I'm a fan of this guy as well, Michael Saylor. He's been one of the biggest voices, one of the biggest advocates in Bitcoin. If you haven't watched any of his videos or interviews, I think that you should. He is the most intelligent person that I've ever heard speak. It's almost discouraging to hear him talk because he just has so much information, and the way he's able to communicate the message, I think, is just so admirable from me anyways. But here he's talking about Ethereum. And last week I was talking about Ethereum and how I think it's a security and not a commodity, whereas Bitcoin, I believe, is a commodity. So it'll be treated much differently than other cryptos such as Ethereum. So I'm going to play this clip here. He's talking about Bitcoin being seen as a commodity from the SEC in the States, the CFTC. Both of them agree that Bitcoin is a commodity, which is a huge aspect of the future here. And I think that most people don't understand that. They still think that Bitcoin is going to be taxed in the similar way to a security, but all these securities commissions are actually considering Bitcoin to be a commodity. So let's see what he says. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this or not. I hope you can, but we'll see.
It's all unethical, right? I mean, the Bitcoin position would be Bitcoin is an ethical commodity. All of these other altcoins are unregistered securities. They're all just equity tokens issued by a company in order to get around going public, and they're committing securities fraud.
Ethereum included.
Of course, especially Ethereum. You know, Ethereum's got $20 billion of ETH token locked up in the staking contract right now, and there's a couple of people that may or may not give it back to you ever.
So I don't know. I hope you could hear that. But he basically said that Ethereum, all these cryptocurrencies are committing securities fraud. They're issuing tokens to go around the security regulations, which is fraud. And he said specifically Ethereum is, along with every other crypto project out there who has the same kind of, what would you call it? The same stuff happening like this. Sorry, these news shows, sometimes the brain goes a little bit fuzzy, but I think you can understand what I'm saying. But I want to end this show today with, this is a Pacific Bitcoin conference here, brought to you by Swan Bitcoin. So there's a day 1 live stream and there's a day 2 live stream. And this total amount is 7.5 hours. So I watched the day 1 and I recently watched the day 2 live stream, which is pretty cool because a ticket to this conference is about $300 US, I think. And I basically got to watch it all for free. Obviously, it's not the same as actually being there in person at one of these conferences, but you still get all the information that you get from being there. You also don't get the networking aspects of it and getting to meet new people, but it's still awesome. So I wanted to point to a few different things here that I took away from this day 2 stream. And the first one is Bitcoin mining. So there's a couple different presentations about Bitcoin mining. And I still think that Bitcoin mining is probably the most confusing or most confused part of Bitcoin. Most people are confused the fact that they think that Bitcoin just uses this insane amount of energy when that actually couldn't be further from the truth. And especially since the price of Bitcoin has gone down, these companies who are mining Bitcoin or the individuals that are mining Bitcoin actually have to fight a lot harder to find the cheapest energy source, right? So when when the price of Bitcoin was way up, you could hook up a miner in your house and it didn't really matter how much the electricity bill was because you were making so much just on mining Bitcoin. The price was $69,000. But in the last year, it's dropped down to $17,000. So these people, these companies are actually having to look for the cheapest source of energy. And that is usually from wasted energy, renewables, or in these less developed countries like Africa. So within this conference here, there's people talking about methane, mining Bitcoin using methane. So when you're producing oil, there's methane that get burned out into the atmosphere. And now they actually have Bitcoin miners that can capture this methane and turn it into Bitcoin. So not only is it stopping the methane gas from going into the atmosphere, it's earning money. And I think that that's actually going to be a huge aspect of our future here in this area in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, because there's so many oil rigs, and Alberta, obviously. And I don't think any of it is truly understood yet. And none of it's really being captured. So I think that there's a huge opportunity, and it's something that we're going to see going into the future, I believe anyways. So, I mean, they were also talking about volcanic energy, hydrogen energy, and the ability to use wasted energy. So highly recommend that chat within. The cool thing about this is you can actually scroll over this and see who's talking and about what. So this one's Bitcoin and debt markets. This one is our Lightning future, talking about the Lightning Network. Answer to life, the universe, blah, blah, blah. Bitcoin mining saves the world. So this is the one I think I watched. It's pretty cool. So that's one part of it. The second thing here was from a lady named Lynn Alden, and she's actually one of the bigger, more influential people within Bitcoin. And she was talking about FTX. As part of her interview, she was talking about FTX. And she said something that I really resonated, or not resonated with, but I understood. She said that FTX was basically just an extension of the fiat world. And so she called it a Ponzi. So the fiat world is the dollar system that we live in, our current system where the central banks decide how much money to print, who gets it, blah, blah, blah. And so she said that this was just basically a digital version of that. And she highlighted the fact that Bitcoin is very different than cryptocurrency and FTX in the sense that Bitcoin is the innovation, not crypto. Bitcoin is. Bitcoin's decentralized. It has a fixed supply. There's no CEO. There's no headquarters. Nobody benefited when Bitcoin came out. Every Bitcoin that's been created was created using energy. It wasn't just given out to somebody. There was no board of directors who benefit from it. And most importantly, Bitcoin has proof of work, which FTX and all these other cryptos don't have. So I know some of that might be a little bit above the listeners here, the audience, and that's okay. I think that it's important to at least familiarize yourself with the terms and the language. And then when you hear it, maybe later on, you can reflect back on what you've learned, and kind of eventually it'll click and it'll all tie together. So, and then this whole thing ends with Michael Saylor talking for about an hour or so with Corey Klippenstein. He's the guy who put on this one, Pacific Bitcoin. And so the chat with Michael Saylor was phenomenal. If you could probably start there. He teaches you almost everything you need to know about Bitcoin in a very easy to understand language. He is almost too smart for his own good at sometimes, where if you're not fully immersed into Bitcoin, some of it doesn't make sense. But I think it's a really good interview to listen to, especially if you're somewhat familiar with Bitcoin and the basics of it, the mining, the proof of work, the fixed supply, everything like that. I highly recommend watching this interview with Michael Saylor at the end of this, at the end of the show. So that's basically what I got for you today. I'm going to close out here. Oh, I had notifications showing. Constantine's talking to me. Glad you made this video. Was wondering the same last night. Oh, that's about the Theta video. I've been posting a couple of videos on Theta lately, and it seems like the Theta communities, obviously, if you're invested into something like Theta, you want people talking good about it. So I understand that part of it, but I'm still a huge fan of Theta. And that's an interesting, maybe I'll close on that. I didn't really intend to here, but I've been talking about Bitcoin and I've been talking about cryptocurrency and how different they are. And once you understand that, I think that you'll truly appreciate Bitcoin a lot more. And so you might be wondering why, if I'm talking like that, why would I support a cryptocurrency like Theta, which is, you know, technically like Ethereum, like Cardano, whatever it may be. But I do think that Theta has a few different characteristics that make it maybe not a security. And the main one there is that Theta did not do an ICO, which means an initial coin offering. And so when Theta was launched, when the tokens were introduced, they didn't sell them to the public. There was no IPO, or it's considered an ICO in crypto, but they didn't do that. All their money was raised via private equity. So that in itself would suggest that it doesn't pass the Howey test, which means, is it a security or not? So I think that there's Bitcoin, there's cryptocurrency, and then there's a few cryptos in between there that have a use case, that have fixed supply, that didn't ICO, and that I think will survive in the future. And a lot of these cryptos will survive, but they will be considered securities, in my opinion. So that changes how, you know, the staking rewards will be. You'll get taxed on them. When they appreciate in value, you'll have to claim a capital gain on them when you sell them. There's a lot of factors involved there. And I think it's important to at least understand the differences there so you can help navigate in the future and your future financial decisions, assuming you're into cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. So let's leave it there. It is December the 8th. I'm going to go have a beer, maybe 10 beers. I might have a coffee Bailey's, actually. That would be great. I got a little bit of coffee left here. This has been another 21 Milli, slight ramble here. What else can I talk about? Well, I have your attention after 25 minutes here or so. King Golf. I did I did a silver video today. It should have, or yesterday, I guess. I'm going to be probably releasing this tomorrow. So go check that out. It's talking about the best gift that you can give to somebody for Christmas, which is silver. And I also talk about our golf company, King Golf. You can check it out, kinggolf.ca, if you still need a few Christmas gifts this year for the golfer on your list. And we also have a podcast. So if you're a golfer and you're listening to this, we have a podcast. It's called The Kingdom. So you can just type into YouTube King Golf, and it should pop up there. We do a weekly live show every week. Me and my little brother and one of our best friends, Drums, is the host. So it's pretty cool stuff. If you're into this kind of stuff, if you're into golf, it might be something that you can listen to in the future. So I think that's it. This is my website for Silverstones, silverstones.ca. If you have any questions, emails, you can either leave a comment below or send me an email, and I'll be sure to get back to you as soon as I can. That's it. I appreciate you very much. If you've been learning anything from these videos, make sure to click the like, click the subscribe, and subscribe to this channel. The more people that, you know, we can trigger the algorithms that way. And the more people that are seeing videos like this, it helps bring the truth to light in terms of our financial markets. And if you're a believer in Bitcoin, the more people who are talking positively about it, the greater the impact it'll have in the future. So that's it. Once again, I really appreciate you, and we'll talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.